Let's go ahead and call our meeting into session. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You know what I said?
Yeah.
I almost stepped on
Okay. This is a special meeting for our FY27 budget draft potential revote. So I'll hand it over to Peter for the initial presentation, and then we'll do comments and questions afterwards. Great.
People at home are saying they can't hear. Sorry.
That's okay. We want people to hear. The microphone is going.
That's fine.
Working now.
Working now.
Yep.
Great. All right, good evening. I will be presenting version 3. It's kind of version 2, but we're calling it version 3 because we had an initial version before our adopted version, which was number 2. So this is version 3, but kind of budget 2, yeah. So just before I start presenting this, I just want to share, we took the board's guidance into deep consideration, went back as a leadership team, talked through where the budget was, had conversation about some things that we thought, as you mentioned, sharpen the pencil as we went back to this version. So we felt like there were 2 things that we wanted to do: scrub as much as possible, make sure we were really, really clear about what our needs were next year, and finding any potential savings through both things that happened from January to March. And we'll have a few examples of that, as well as really kind of being sure that we're adhering to all of the programs, systems, the things that we know, that we hear our community saying, these are things that we want to see Springfield move in these directions. And if we don't build these systems, we can't shift our student outcomes. We can't bring community and school together. We can't do the things that our community wants. So I heard that from all of you. I think our leadership team who's here tonight also was 100% aligned with that vision. So that was the approach in developing this version. And try to see how to. Okay. So what's changed since the first budget that you got? Our revenue has increased by $15,000 due to special ed and federal grant adjustments. The work that we did, and I'll go into detail in a moment, but the work we did at reducing our local expenses, we were able to decrease our expenses by $367,000. We also saw between January and March, we saw the addition of federal funding to the tune of $575,000. And you'll see how we've applied that to local expenditures going into FY27. So here's an outline of the local expense reductions. Our special ed tuition, we were able to save $150,000. We've got updated placement and tuition cost data. This is through ODP. So that was a positive direction for us. The curriculum line, the $205,000, is the cost shift I mentioned related to the federal funding that we received between our first budget and this budget. We've got a transportation line of $27,000. We decided as we're kind of moving down the line with these different budgets that we needed to for next year let go of the van that we had intended to lease, and we'll work on other ways to support students getting where they need to go and continuing to open up local opportunity. And then just a small reduction in technology. So this is just a graph to show, you can see that the over 200K in curriculum and the special ed tuition are making up the bulk of that $367,000 reduction. So staffing change, as you all know, as we go through the spring, winter and spring, people either resign, they're moving jobs, we're hiring people. So our numbers are in constant flux. We had a number of changes, 21 to be exact, 21 position changes in terms of the cost of the employee and the cost of the employee's benefits. Some of these positions are unfilled, but we have to assume a family plan as opposed to budgeting for a single plan and then being on the hook for $20,000 that we hadn't accounted for. With all of the position changes, those 21 position changes, and the reduction of 2 positions, these are 2 resignations or retirements from the first adopted budget to the current present time, we're saving roughly $250,000, but the changes to the healthcare plans of those 21 other positions negated the savings from those 2 reductions. And so we see an increase here of $41,000. You can see the 2 position, just to quickly talk about those 2 reductions. One is a tech innovation position that we've had for a long time. We're going to work on ways to continue the great work that Colin has done and incorporate it within kind of new structures that we're developing. The second is a high school social studies position that's due to declining enrollment. We are starting next year, I mentioned this previously, we are under the state's new required class size minimums, starting with FY27. And that means it's at the high school level, it's 18 is the minimum. The exclusions are AP, final courses like a Spanish 5 course, and a few other kind of exclusions to those numbers that you don't have to count those classes. It is, the state has said after 3 years, if you are not meeting those required class size minimums, that they can take action, etc. So we'll be watching that going into FY28 to make sure that we are kind of where we need to be. So we have that $575,000. We haven't, quote unquote, spent all of that money yet. We have a lot of work to do as a leadership team to determine how we're going to use those funds to support all the work that we have designated and will designate as part of the strategic planning process. The addition of those funds, as I mentioned, helps to bring down the cost of this current version, and there's additional funding which we'll be looking at, whether it's other kind of instructional needs. We will be thinking about this in terms of our specified objectives through the strategic plan. So we're not just spending money on things that seem like, oh, let's get that, but really do it thoughtfully and collectively and work towards that cohesion that we've been talking about. There are sometimes questions around what's the impact of a certain dollar amount on the tax rate. So just wanted to give a quick example of, to get to a 5-cent tax rate reduction on our local homestead, that would be the elimination of roughly 9 teaching positions. So it takes a lot of, essentially it takes a lot of funds, a lot of reduction for 1 cent, 2 cent, 3 cents, just to give perspective in terms of our tax rate, and essentially like how much of it is it's not easy to control with CLA and all the other factors involved. We've had this graph before. This is an updated graph, just showing how much, and you can see that the 10.26 Springfield residential tax rate. As I pan over it, you can see that's 4.4 million of our total. No, 9. So we are roughly for the residential tax rate, it's roughly 10% of the total of the $40 million budget. And we've talked about this to the community every year. It was in our budget book as well, and we shared that. And I think it's important for folks to see that for every reduction we make, it's a very, very small portion of the total. So this version brings the cost per pupil down to 181 reduction to $15,000. You may recall the email that I sent you all on S220 or is it 220? I think it's S220. That is the spending cap bill that is still at play. And there is some concern that could become a reality. Some districts that are over the excess spending threshold or are close to it are concerned because it's going to essentially takes that excess spending threshold and brings it down. If that is enacted, being at 15,000, I believe the number I saw of where it would go was 15.5. So we would still be under the excess spending threshold. There are districts that would have a significant impact if that's enacted. And you may recall this was how this session started. It was the first thing out of the gate from Senator Baruth. So I think we're in a good place there. And
so question for something more for clarity. Anything above the excess spending threshold is then raised locally, right?
Yeah.
So being under, we still get the state average, but if we were above that, anything above that,
We're double taxed.
Yes, double taxed.
Yeah. And some communities have decided to pay that. Some communities will do everything they can to stay under it. And it's kind of case by case. There are quite a number of districts that are spending over that excess spending threshold. Locally, I think the closest one is Woodstock. So here's kind of an overview of this current version and the budget realities. 15,000. Our increase now is 7.96% in terms of local ed spending, and it's now a 0.99% local expenditure growth reduced from that 1.9 that we've been talking about. So that 0.99, we're definitely beating most districts in the state.
Making progress in I can't say the right word, investments in our students.
And just to reiterate, so we, despite all these reductions and fine tuning, we're still protecting our programs. We are responding to enrollment decline where we need to, and utilizing our grant funds and federal funds as strategically as we can.
Questions around?
Maybe before questions, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Oh, you did a great job.
Thank you. That was a plan, by the way. We rehearsed that before.
I have,
Can I get my paycheck tomorrow?
You do.
I've got one, and really it's a little bit for Steve, as well as the general community. Going back to that revenue side, one thing I've heard in the past is that if we were to make small cuts, that doesn't necessarily change the local on the hook for. It will change what we're getting from the state. Is that accurate, or can you say that in a better way?
Yeah, for every dollar you cut,
Yep.
you're only saving 20 cents locally. That would be the best analogy I could explain.
Or 10 cents for people who live here as a primary home.
Residentially, I'm talking
Yeah.
both commercially and.
But I mean,
Yeah.
The local's
Which is
only 10%.
It is such an impact to see a 5 cent. That's why it's such a large impact on our students. And not
Right.
only on our students,
Exactly.
but our staff as well, right? If we were to really go and try and make a reduction, it would cripple our students, it would cripple our staff. And as a trustee, right? That's really what, as a trustee, not just a board member, but a trustee of the district and the board, that's something I can't get behind. And making sure that our students have what they need, our staff has what they need. This budget is a less than 1% expenditure increase. And I just wanted to make sure that you understood, right, the impact and,
I do.
that
Yeah,
little bit.
I've looked at that.
So,
And another example that, and this, I know gets in the weeds and gets complicated, but I've already had 2 questions about it. Because of the 575 of federal funds, which is an advantage to us. And frankly, that gave us part of the ability to cost shift, as Peter said, 205 or whatever that number was. But the ballot, if you look at the ballot language, the ballot's actually going up $207,000, which is the 575 less the local cuts. That's in that difference. But our cost per pupil's going down. And our taxes are going down. It's another example that we're just getting more money
Yep.
from outside sources that are funding the program. And I know that's competent to understand, but it's a great example that we're getting 575 outside money and it's reducing our taxes and our obligation.
thank you.
Any other questions, comments from the board?
I mean, just following up, I sort of have an epiphany on how to explain sort of funding at some point, and it's very much in line with what Jess just said. If we cut $200,000 from the budget, that makes very little to no impact on the tax rate, but it makes a huge impact on our students. And so, I think,
One staff.
yeah,
Like, it's
Right.
both.
right. So it's the complexities of education's funding is just mind boggling. And just as soon as I think I figured it out, something else changes. But that's, I think all of us after this last meeting were, very committed to our students and staff and ensuring they have everything they need to, bring up those test scores, address the community concerns about our students and about our schools. And I think some thoughtful choices have been made here. And, it was a good job.
Yes, Steve.
It would be helpful for me to also, if someone can clarify what percentage of our total budget are we able to change without because at all, because we already have contracts in place, we have health insurance costs, we have facility maintenance costs, et cetera, and that are either, not flexible for us to actually cut into, or, as people have been suggesting, would really gouge into the heart of what our educational system is all about. Do you have a sense of what even often the federal budget is talked about that way, where you have the debt, debt
Yeah.
payments and Social Security and, all of that. The actual amount that you cut in the federal budget is really minuscule compared to the total. And so all of the cuts that are then proposed by budget cutters are really decimating the relatively few programs and services that can be cut. How would you explain that, either you, Peter, or
I would say,
expert?
it's hard. There's analysis that happens every year to respond to where are our students, what are their needs, what are staff, what are parents, what are students telling us in terms of their their position within the organization and what they're seeing, and we collect all of that information together and create a budget, right? And we have a vision of these are things we need to do. Schools have increasingly taken on social, emotional, and mental health, and kind of like the whole medical realities of 2026 too. And the cost, if you look back at school budgets 30 years ago and you look at them today, there are so many positions that have been added that didn't exist. The names didn't even exist 30 years ago. All the acronyms that you walked into as a new board member, those didn't exist 30 years ago. And so schools have necessarily had to pivot from every student walks into the classroom, we expect every student is ready to learn, everything is fine, we teach, they go home. That's the classic model, right? That is not the world we live in, and it's not how schools operate. Schools operate to make sure that students are prepared to learn. And for a student to be prepared to learn, there's all sorts of other things that need to take place to create that experience for the student. And so I would say, like, as you go into a budget and you start cutting, you're probably looking, having worked in other states, and I spent a lot of my career in Oregon, where funding is much lower than Vermont. And as a high school English teacher, I had writing classes of 40 kids. And teaching a writing class with 40 kids is really, really challenging. So what happened is we did save money. In Vermont, you'd have 2 teachers for that one. We saved money. What we lost was the ability for me to give good feedback, the ability for me to really connect with each kid in the way that I wanted to. So I felt a lot of strain just working within that educational system, because I knew what students needed, but I didn't feel like I had the capacity to give it to them with the time I had and the class sizes I had. So I think that's, you can always do something cheaper, but to do something well, and again, like we have sharpened pencils, we have gone through a process of trying to get rid of anything extraneous in our budget. But there's, when we came forward with our first version, and I think this is the conversation we had leading up to this version, we said like, let's present a budget that gets us as low as we can go. Because we know where the community is too. We know that, you know, the whole state conversation around how expensive it is in the world right now, you know, and gas prices are now $1 more, and right, like all these things. It feels like since COVID, we've got this compounding economic upthrust happening. And so we were very well aware of that as we built this budget, and feel like we are in a place where we feel like we've cut what we can cut, and further cuts would deteriorate services, would impact staff, would impact student success and student support. And so that, I guess that's a long answer. It's a great question.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I'm thinking ahead in terms of how we communicate
Mhm.
both the difficulty and the achievement that we can
Yeah.
feel good about in terms of our ability to reduce overall costs. And one way that I'm thinking about it is, what's our current sort of national inflation rate? Is it about 3%, 2.9, 3%?
I think so. Rick.
Yeah,
Was
try
it-
to,
Yeah. Yeah.
Right around there. So if we're talking about less than 1%, where our inflation rate is a third of what the national general inflation rate is, that's a damn good
Mhm.
outcome, I think. But we need
Yeah.
a way to communicate that to people effectively. You know, it's partly an advocacy question, an outreach, a marketing kind of question that maybe we should have some discussion about how for one thing is, I've been asked by a number of people who I met along the way in my campaign to get here, who were heartbroken at the budget not passing, and who've contacted me and said, how can we help get the budget passed on the revote? I'm willing to volunteer. I'm willing to help get out there and spread the word. And I said I would bring that up at this meeting and ask board members and staff what the best way is for us to really communicate why this is a great outcome for the community.
I think the other thing that we don't do a good job sharing is where I think we're in the middle of it. All of the work that's been done this year on curriculum and on literacy is going to pay back, right? We're going to get the right instruction in our students. We're going to help raise the literacy levels of our students. And all of that is not only going to raise outcomes, but it's also, right, it should also reduce services that are needed, because we're going to put the work in and get these students back to where they need to be. So that's the type of stuff too that's going to, and it's not going to be a next year, a 2 year down the road. It is going to take some time to get there, but we can't get there if we don't make the investment and make sure that we're providing the resources that we need to. I don't think we do a good job saying that with the community, because
Right.
it's hard. They want to see, you know, the changes quickly, and it's not quick.
That's not how it works.
can
No.
I piggyback on your answer a little bit? And I'm surprised it hasn't come up already, and if this one doesn't pass, I'm sure it'll come up, but because it comes up every year with these failed budgets. You know, everyone said, you know, screams local control all the time, and it's a joke that my response is local control is who uses your gym after 7:00 at night on a Sunday night, because the state and Fed is pretty much dictating everything that we need to do. In this budget, the only thing that is not dictated, which I think is what you were trying to ask, is
Right.
what's discretionary, is co-curricular activities and busing. And if you were to cut those, that's about 3.5% of the budget. And there's very little discretionary expenditures in here.
But also, if we were to cut that, it wouldn't be a big impact on the local tax dollar either, right?
No,
Still that
So-
20 cents.
Yeah, but the question was,
You could, but it,
the question is what's discretionary? And you're right. I mean, the state and Fed is paying for 80% of that. But that's really all you really can do. I mean, I can't think of anything else that is discretionary in here. I guess you could turn
Well,
the heat down to 60 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, there,
You know, you could do a few of those things.
yeah.
But we have, you know, toot my department's horn for a little bit. I mean, we have worked very hard. I mean, our oil consumption today compared to 5 years ago is a fraction of what it was. And a lot of that was the help of federal dollars that helped us put in a $8 million HVAC system here in the high school. So, you know, we have leveraged those dollars as well as we possibly could to save the investment later on, which I think we're seeing, and I think the board saw. I gave you a report of that last fall or
Yep.
something. We saw the significant savings that we were producing. And that helps offset all the other increases. So that's what helps keep us down, but it's a small number.
Other questions around the budget? I would say we've asked for community input on it, so I would just say that we do have community members here. We do have people in attendance. If anybody has any questions, comments about version 2 of our budget, be happy to take questions or comments from virtual attendees or people who are here in person. Just want to raise your hand. Larry.
I appreciate your financial analysis and your number crunching, but nothing I've heard here tonight is going to make a difference in the vote. And I agree with Rick that local control is a joke. I'm not sure he said it that way, but local control requires you to have a budget passed by people, not just by the board. And you're not going to pass this budget. You were below inflation on your first budget, your inflation rate, and it didn't make a difference. And all the things that you put in your new version are terrific. They go on, they're good. Two things are going to happen. People are going to say, we knew you could have made those cuts the first time. Not true, but they're going to say it. And they're not going to see how this budget's going to make a difference in terms of outcomes and performance. And I think when you get around to talking to the public, to persuade them to vote for this budget, that people are going to need to understand that how the money you're spending is going to make a difference in performance and outcomes.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? All right, so with the budget presented, we do have the article in front of us. It would be a revote on Tuesday, May 5th at Riverside from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. And the current article reads, shall the voters of Springfield Town School District approve the school board to spend $41,666,512, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $15,008 per pupil. This projected spending per pupil is 7.96% higher than the spending for the current year.
it doesn't do justice.
Well, the spending per pupil last time was just under $10,000, and we've gone down, or the 10% was just under 10%, excuse me. And now we're down to about
961.
961. It was below
Yep.
10. Now we're down to below 8. So we can, if we approve this, then the Barbara would start the absentee ballots, and then we would warn the meeting, and then we would start our communication plan trying to,
This is warning the meeting.
this would warn it. But
Barbara will, if you sign this tonight, Barbara will start mailing out absentees tomorrow afternoon.
so I read it. Is there a motion to
So,
approve? Steve made the motion. Is there a second to that? Steve seconded. Any further discussion? None. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. That's it. So we'll pass this around for signature.
Correct.
That being said, is there a motion to adjourn?
so moved.
You made the motion. Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Have a good
And
night.
one, before SAPA goes off, one final plug. Please come out Monday night, 6 o'clock at the high school. We are inviting the entire community to come together to talk about hopes and dreams for Springfield schools. We are working on our strategic plan, and we need as many people there as possible to talk with other community members and help us build a vision and continue the work that we're doing and potentially go in new directions to address all the needs of our students. So please come. I think it'll be meaningful and productive, and hope to see you all there.
To order copies of this program, please call 802-885-6248. This program was created using equipment of SAPA TV. The views and opinions expressed in this video are not necessarily those of SAPA TV or its staff. Visit us online at www.sapatv.org. Thanks for watching.